From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
Kamala, you're fired.
I say, bring it on.
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill. We know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Only 8 days to go before the U.S. picks a new president, and the candidates are making every effort to finish strong, or not. We've got the latest, but first, a look at the headlines. Former First Lady Melania Trump makes a surprise appearance at her husband Donald Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden on Sunday. The former president dances with his wife as she speaks about his candidacy for president for the first time this election. Iraq lodges an official complaint with the United Nations over Israel's use of its airspace to attack Iran. The Iraqi Foreign Ministry also plans to bring up this matter with the United States. The Kremlin strongly rejects accusations by Georgia's president for interfering in Tbilisi's contested election. This as the United States and the European Union call for an investigation into alleged violations in the parliamentary elections. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi hosts his Spanish counterpart Pedro Sanchez as the two leaders inaugurate a military aircraft manufacturing plant. This is the first visit by a Spanish head of state to India in 18 years. And Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba says he will continue to rule the country despite his party losing a majority in the general election. Japan's ruling coalition has fallen short of a majority for the first time in 15 years. We begin with the race for the White House. Donald Trump held a massive rally at Madison Square Garden in New York City on Sunday. However, the MAGA congregation was severely criticized for its racial rhetoric, coarse insults, and dangerous threats to immigrants. Starting off his speech with a so-called message of hope, the Republican presidential nominee once again pledged to carry out the largest deportation in American history.
The United States is now an occupied country, but it will soon be an occupied country no longer. Not going to be happening. Not going to be happening. November 5th, 2024, 9 days from now, will be Liberation Day in America. It's going to be Liberation Day. On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program in American history. Next Tuesday, you have to stand up and you have to tell Kamala Harris that you've done a terrible job, that crooked Joe Biden has done a terrible job. You've destroyed our country. We're not going to take it anymore. Kamala, you're fired. Get out. Get out. You're fired.
Now joining Donald Trump was his biggest donor, Elon Musk, who again called himself a dark MAGA supporter.
As you can see, I'm not just MAGA, I'm dark, gothic MAGA. Well, the energy in this room is incredible. But there's a lot of people out there who need to vote for President Trump, okay? So this is a real battle. This is a real election battle. So you need to get friends and family to vote. Make sure they vote early. This is important.
Now, of course, it didn't take long for Donald Trump's loyalists to show their true colors as they unleashed a slew of racist and hate-filled remarks against the Puerto Rican community and Vice President Kamala Harris. Calling the American territory of Puerto Rico an island of garbage, Donald Trump's allies sparked massive outrage from Democrats, Puerto Ricans, and even fellow Republicans.
I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico. Where are my proud Latinos at tonight? You guys see what I mean? It's wide open. There's so many of them. It's absolutely incredible. Believe it or not, people, I welcome migrants to the United States of America with open arms. And by open arms, I mean like this. It's wild. And these Latinos, they love making babies, too.
The verbal attacks then switched from immigrants to Vice President Kamala Harris as conservative commentator Tucker Carlson spewed racist comments at the Democrat by labeling her a Samoan Malaysian, knowing very well that Kamala Harris is half black and half Indian.
Kamala Harris, she got 85 million votes because she's just so impressive. As the first Samoan Malaysian low IQ former California prosecutor ever to be elected president, it was just a groundswell of popular support. And anyone who thinks otherwise is just a freak or a criminal.
The dark tone continued throughout the hours-long rally as Donald Trump's loyalists piled on vulgar and racist remarks, one after the other.
You know something, Trump maniacs? I don't see no stinking Nazis in here. I don't see no stinking domestic terrorists in here. The only thing I see in here are a bunch of hard-working men and women that are real Americans, brother.
The racist and hate-filled rally comes just 8 days before a majority of Americans go to the ballot box despite early voting seeing record turnouts. The election is hinging on battleground states, with most crucial being Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Arizona, where the race still remains neck and neck. Over 41 million Americans have already cast their ballots as Kamala Harris and Donald Trump announced a blitz of rallies for this week to ensure maximum voter turnout. However, Donald Trump's racist and vulgar rally at Madison Square Garden may turn out to be a major wake-up call to many, particularly in the Republican camp. And staying with the presidential race, the weekend was a star-studded affair for Vice President Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. On Friday, superstar singer Beyonce endorsed Kamala Harris in Texas in front of a 30,000-strong Houston crowd.
We are so happy to be standing here on this stage as proud country Texas women supporting and celebrating the one and only Vice President Kamala Harris.
The Houston native was criticized on social media platform X for not performing her iconic Freedom single at the rally, which has been a trademark for the Harris campaign. Next, the vice president was joined by former First Lady Michelle Obama on Saturday in Michigan, where she repeatedly warned against another Donald Trump presidency.
So I hope you'll forgive me if I'm a little frustrated that some of us are choosing to ignore Donald Trump's gross incompetence while asking Kamala to dazzle us at every turn. I hope that you'll forgive me if I'm a little angry that we are indifferent to his erratic behavior, his obvious mental decline, his history as a convicted felon, a known slumlord, a predator found liable for sexual abuse, all of this while we pick apart Kamala's answers from interviews that he doesn't even have the courage to do, y'all.
Addressing men, Michelle Obama urged them to vote for Kamala Harris if they wanted to support their mothers, wives, and daughters.
Let me warn you, your rage does not exist in a vacuum. If we don't get this election right, your wife, your daughter, your mother, we as women will become collateral damage to your rage. So fellas, before you cast your votes, ask yourselves, what side of history do you want to be on?
Now, while the former First Lady rallied for Kamala Harris, Donald Trump sat down with Joe Rogan for a podcast in Texas. The 3-hour-long conversation raked in millions of views and saw record viewership in the first 24 hours. The interaction ranged from Donald Trump's assassination attempts to false claims that he won the 2020 election, before making a U-turn and accepting defeat when pushed by Joe Rogan for proof. Donald Trump also claimed to have gotten a call from Google CEO Sundar Pichai praising the Republican for the visit to McDonald's in Pennsylvania last week. And speaking on foreign policy, Donald Trump said he would solve the war in Ukraine as president by directly speaking to Vladimir Putin. Incidentally, on the very same day, Donald Trump's running mate J.D. Vance said Putin was an adversary, not an enemy. Now, Joe Rogan has previously described Donald Trump as a threat to American democracy and refused to host a Republican on his show just 2 years ago. However, the two seemed friendly during the 3-hour-long chat as they shared stories about UFC and common friend Elon Musk. The Republican hopes the podcast will consolidate his influence among male voters who make up the core audience of the Joe Rogan experience. Towards the end of the chat, Joe Rogan defended Kamala Harris as Donald Trump shot verbal attacks at the Democrat. Rogan added that he was looking forward to hosting Kamala Harris on his podcast and that it would make for a great interaction. With the show's audience skewed towards men, an appearance by Kamala Harris could help her connect with a demographic Trump is winning overwhelmingly. Amid all the star power dominating the presidential race, a surprising subplot has emerged involving none other than outspoken billionaire Elon Musk. Known for being against open borders and advocating for stricter immigration policies, Donald Trump's biggest ally now finds himself tangled in an immigration controversy of his own. President Joe Biden has called the Tesla CEO a hypocrite after reports emerged that Musk, too, was an illegal immigrant once. Now, as Musk's influence grows on the political landscape, this backstory might reshape the conversation on immigration just days before the election. Here's our report with more.
The presidential election is just about a week away, and the stakes are higher than ever. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are neck and neck.
For the United States of America, Elon Musk!
And in the midst of it all, a twist has pulled Elon Musk straight into the spotlight. This time, it's not just about his billions or his platform X, it's his past. A new report from the Washington Post is claiming that Musk, who's one of Donald Trump's staunchest allies, as well as an outspoken critic of the Biden administration's immigration policies, may have violated the U.S. immigration law himself back in the 1990s. Back then, the ambitious South African immigrant was on a J-1 student visa. He arrived in California in 1995, set to attend Stanford University, only to abandon it within days. Instead, he jumped straight into building Zip2, a tech startup that would later make him a millionaire. The Washington Post's report alleged that this pivot from student to entrepreneur wasn't entirely legal, and it noted how his partners scrambled to help him secure a legal work visa. "We don't want our founder being deported," former board member Derek Proudian recalled. And even Musk himself has described this early chapter as a legal grey area. After these scandalous revelations, President Joe Biden didn't miss a beat. He hit back at Donald Trump and his billionaire friend. At a rally over the weekend, he publicly questioned Musk's double standards. President described the Republican nominee as a loser.
His new the wealthiest man in the world is now his ally, right? Well, that wealthiest man in the world turned out to be a legal worker here when he was here. Oh, I'm serious. He was supposed to be in school when he came on a student visa. He wasn't in school. He was violating the law. And he's talking about all these illegals coming our way. And I'm just going to say it straight up, he's a loser as a man. He's a loser as a man. We fought too hard for the gains we made, for the people we grew up with, the neighborhoods we come from. We have fewer people crossing the border illegally now, or crossing the border, period, than any time since his third year as President of the United States. It matters. Relationships matter. And relationships with foreign leaders matter. Trust for foreign leaders matter. And we've built that trust. So anyway, guys, please, 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 go the extra step.
Then, in a late-night post, Musk shot back on X, calling Biden's remarks lies and asserting he had a visa that transitioned from a J-1 to an H-1B work visa. Today, Musk's voice on X is a powerful force considering he's the owner. Bloomberg reports he's one of the most watched users on the platform, especially on polarizing issues like immigration. With millions of views on his posts about border security and undocumented immigration this year alone, his influence is undeniable. It's a strange irony. One of America's wealthiest immigrants advocating against open borders while facing allegations of violating the same system he now criticizes. As the election barrels forward, Musk's story is likely to stay in the headlines, and his past might just play a surprising role in shaping the future of US politics.
And moving to the list of endorsements, the Washington Post has become the second major newspaper not to endorse a presidential candidate. The move comes as a massive shocker for readers, as the Washington Post has endorsed candidates since the 1970s, all of whom were Democrats. But what's more surprising was the report by the newspaper itself, which outlined the sequence of events that led to the decision. The report said the editors were ready with a draft endorsement for the Vice President Kamala Harris. However, it was canceled after the paper's billionaire owner, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, decided not to publish it. Now the move has sparked a wave of criticism, with former staffers calling the Washington Post, quote, spineless and cowardice. Robert Kagan, a columnist and editor-at-large at the newspaper, resigned in the wake of the paper's stunning decision. The newspaper also faced backlash from its readers, with thousands canceling their subscriptions as a result. Earlier, the Los Angeles Times refused to endorse any presidential candidates after its billionaire owner, Patrick Soon-Shiong, blocked the plan to endorse Kamala Harris. The decision prompted 3 members of the editorial board to resign and thousands of readers to cancel their subscriptions. Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump has received an endorsement by the New York Post, which is owned by media mogul Rupert Murdoch. So far, Kamala Harris has been endorsed by more than 50 newspapers and other publications, the most prominent being the New York Times, The Guardian, Rolling Stone, and Vogue magazine. Meanwhile, around a dozen media outlets, including the New York Post, the Washington Times, and Maxim, have endorsed Donald Trump. It seems like billionaires are less worried about their newspaper's duty to the public and more concerned about what might happen to them if the candidate they didn't support wins the election. And in our final report, we turn to the Middle East. On Saturday, Israel launched intense airstrikes on Iran. Explosions illuminated the skies over Tehran as Israeli fighter jets took out Iran's missile production and air defense capabilities. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praised the strikes, while Iran's supreme leader warned of a bigger response. Here's more on how an all-out war between Iran and Israel could shape the U.S. presidential election.
In the early hours of Saturday, Israel launched a calculated and intense series of airstrikes on Iran. Several reports of explosions were followed by flashes of light and the distant rumble of detonations.
I mean, we need to get a message through. We can't keep getting those missiles fired to Israel, and we have to retaliate. So I think it was a good action.
If by strike, you mean these shots and firecrackers last night, which did not wake up anyone in Tehran, if this is your power, then woe to you.
The Israeli Defense Forces confirmed that its jets and drones executed precise strikes, which struck at least 20 strategic sites, including missile manufacturing plants, surface-to-air missile defenses, and other military installations in Tehran and provinces like Khuzestan and Elam.
Well, it does really open up a Pandora's box. We have to wait and see how the Iranians respond. At the moment, they are downplaying the extent of damage. They are talking up their anti-air defense system, saying it was successful in deterring and aborting the attack. But it really remains to be seen how the authorities in Iran feel about the extent of the damage and whether they feel the need and the urgency to respond yet again with another round of missiles towards Israel.
In Tel Aviv, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant were closely following the operation from the IDF's Command and Control Center. By dawn, after 3 waves of strikes and nearly 3 hours, the IDF announced the conclusion of the operation.
I can now confirm that we have concluded the Israeli response to Iran's attack against Israel. We conducted targeted and precise strikes on military targets in Iran, thwarting immediate threats to the state of Israel.
Netanyahu praised the airstrikes as precise and powerful, declaring that they had inflicted several damage to Iran's missile production capabilities.
We hit hard Iran's defense capabilities and its ability to produce missiles that are aimed at us. The attack in Iran was precise and powerful and achieved all of its objectives.
Meanwhile, in Iran, the response was more subdued yet defiant. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei urged Iranian officials to consider the most effective way to demonstrate Iran's strength to Israel. He advised them not to rush into an exaggerated response, but to weigh what was best for the country and its people.
They made a mistake. They, of course, exaggerated it. Their exaggeration is wrong, but note that downplaying it is also wrong. Saying, no, there was nothing, it wasn't important, and this is also wrong. The condition of the work should be determined by the officials, and that which is in the best interest of the people and the country should take place.
The Iranian military reported limited damage, claiming to have intercepted several projectiles, but acknowledged the loss of 4 soldiers. The United States was aware of the planned strikes. Just before the operation commenced, President Joe Biden's administration urged Israel to keep its response targeted and proportional and avoid critical targets like Iran's oil infrastructure and nuclear facilities.
Mr. President, did you get a heads up from Israel on the Iran strike? Did you get any heads up?
Yes. I was on with the intelligence community for the last half hour, 3.5 hours. And it looks like they didn't hit anything other than military targets. My hope is this is the end.
However, several photos showed Israel hit Iran's former nuclear weapons test building. And with attacks on missile production sites near Tehran, a former UN weapons inspector noted that the Israeli strikes may have significantly hampered Iran's ability to mass-produce missiles. As tensions rise, the situation remains on a knife's edge, with the threat of broader conflict simmering. The United States is on the cusp of an election, and how American foreign policy might shift could impact the volatile balance in the Middle East. Will Washington stand firm or pivot as the White House prepares for a change in leadership?
That's our show for today. Thank you so much for spending time with us, and we look forward to having you right back here again tomorrow. Again, thanks everyone for watching. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
Kamala, you're fired.
I say, bring it on.
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on First Post America.